Today's episode of Leveling Up is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download at www.audibletrial.com/OrangeDrinkSocial. Over 100,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, MP3 player, Mac, or PC. So here we are on the second episode of Leveling Up. I thought last week's went well. We submitted the pilot to the network. It got picked up, so here we are again. We're going to try to have a more structured format going forward, just so listeners can more easily follow what's going on. So we have a general format we're going to try to stick to, but of course when we have digressions and sidebars, we'll do that too. So essentially we're just going to have some news for you coming up, big news from a Sony press conference yesterday that Dan and I watched together. We're going to recap that. We're going to go into this week's main topic, which is forgettable games, forgotten favorites. And we're going to have a few short segments at the end, including what were we playing, and we're going to have some questions answered that the audience asked from last week. So without further ado, let's get to the news. So last night, Sony held a pretty huge announcement, and what they essentially did was they ended up announcing the PlayStation 4. Dan and I watched this, we thought was going to be pretty short, but it ended up being about a 2-hour-long conference. And we're going to run down some of the key games that came out of that, some of the key features of the system, and overall it looks pretty interesting, so let's get down to it. I know that we looked it up afterwards, and it seems like it's going to get a holiday release. Is that official yet, or is that just what people are anticipating?
I believe that's just what people are anticipating, honestly, just based off the fact that I can't imagine they launch it in like February or March, and I don't see it being a holiday 2014 release.
Oh,
so
of course not, yeah.
I think it's just logical speculation that it'll be around holiday time this year.
Right, and looking back at the releases, I didn't check the Wii U, but I know the Xbox 360 was released in November, the second week of November in 2005. Then the Wii and the PS3 were both released in the second week of November in 2006. So I would assume we're going to get a second week of November release in time for Black Friday.
Yeah, and the Wii U was released in November of this past year in 2012. So it's been a trend for the past few generations to be November releases right before Black Friday and the holidays.
It's a good move. So Sony, as we said earlier, they held a press conference yesterday. It ended up being a lot longer than I thought it would. Dan told me that it was happening. I went to the link, and instead of about like a half-hour announcement, it ended up being 2 hours. So
it was a fun 2 hours of trying to get the stream to work. The first hour was a mess. Sony apparently did not anticipate the fact that people wanted to watch their press conference that they hyped for an entire month, so the stream went down for about 15 or 20 minutes.
Right. And there was this great video that we were watching. We were watching a stream on YouTube of this kid. He was the one hosting it, and every time the stream went down, he would say something like, this is going to make a lot of people buy the Xbox now. I don't know.
Yeah. I know I'm buying an iPad just based off that. I'm just going to play my games on that now. I'm not going to buy consoles anymore.
I would never buy a PS3 henceforth. I mean, Sony, that feed was just so terrible. There's no way you can justify giving them any more money.
I know.
But on a more serious note, let's get into some of the specifications. I wrote some notes down while we were watching it. The development team came out and they basically said there were 3 goals associated with the system. The first of which was having nothing between you and the game. Keep in mind, though, that these buzzwords basically are, I mean, who knows how much meaning they have.
The whole conference is buzzwords.
Yeah.
It was buzzwords and concepts, too. A lot of these concepts are just that. They're not actually even really implemented in any real case yet. That's the main issue. Right.
So we had nothing between you and the game is number 1. 2 was fluidly connect you to a larger world. Again, that's not much information. And 3, harnessing all the potential power. I think that was the third one.
Well, I assume that just seems like a given. They shouldn't even need to say they're doing that. If we're going to have a powerful console and just start pumping out 16-bit games.
Right. Though actually, I'm just kind of paraphrasing that because the third one, I heard them say harnessing the potential, but then the stream cut out, so I assume that's along the lines of what they were saying. So
well, that's what they said, though, because the stream cut out, and that's their fault. So
right.
whatever they said before the stream died is it.
And eventually, yeah.
Just to cut back to what Dave said briefly was, he said like that's just kind of like that. What exactly did you say, Dave? Repeat what you said a moment ago.
Well, they're basically just concepts. I mean, just taking one example out is like the share button. It's an idea. It's going to be there at the end, obviously, because it was one of their big points. But how's it going to be implemented on any given game is still a question.
Yeah, and it's not entirely relevant to what you said. Then I misinterpreted what you said the first time, but it kind of goes off of it. I know I read afterwards on a I forget which game website it was, but it was a reputable one that they showed some gameplay of the game Watch Dogs, which is coming out, which looks great. But despite showing us gameplay footage at a PS4 conference, apparently that was running on a PC engine, not the PS4 hardware. Which kind of just shows, like, everything they showed was just, like, the concept was, here's how it might be, but they actually weren't even showing it playing on the PS4.
Well, here's the thing with that, though, is that even though they were running it on a PC, it is using a PC processor. It's not using a laptop or a basic, game engine processor. It's using a real live computer processor, so I didn't have any real problem with that. I mean,
Go ahead.
I was about to say, like you said, though, I mean, yeah, it could be completely different when it comes out. I mean, it could look a little bit different, but I don't think that it will really. I guess that's my point.
Well, yeah, the specifications of it are pretty phenomenal looking at it, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's basically the exact same thing as it would be on a PC, because they said it has an 8 GB memory drive, an enhanced GPU, an x86 CPU processor,
an 8 GB. 8 GB
RAM.
Memory drive is going to do. Nobody's going to use that because you know how big the one on the PS3 is.
How big's that?
256 megabytes.
Okay.
So the jump between those two, no one's going to need that much processing power.
That could be true, yeah. Though, I mean, maybe they're just looking for the future. Maybe at some point they will.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years into it, but that's not going to be the power of that's not going to be seen or used for a while.
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, it's such a huge jump, thinking about it.
Yeah.
But to be fair, it was a huge jump between the original Xbox to an Xbox 360 or a PS2 to a PS3. And the other thing with that, too, is, I mean, that was one of the big things. Oh, it's so powerful. It's so powerful. Well, it has been 9 years. I mean, you usually get a new computer after every 4.
Yeah.
So, sure. I mean, it's to be expected. I mean, yes, is it any less impressive? No, but, I mean, it also should be expected at this point. You wouldn't want them trudging out something that was just a little rise over the PS3, because then that wouldn't be good.
That would be the Wii U.
Yep, that basically would be that.
Yeah, well, we'll see where it goes. But a lot of the things that they did show were pretty impressive. Like, they showed this image that they created of an old man, this rendering, and he looked it just looked like a photograph. It looked totally real, and it's kind of scary where we're going with that. Like, you could see all his expressions. I think they said that you can understand what he's thinking without even having to hear him speak. Like that.
Well, they had like every detail on every pore on his face like visible. Like, it literally looked like a photograph. Like, it looks better than CGI you see in movies. Like,
right.
And even that game Knack that they showed, the cutscenes for that in the trailer looked higher quality than you would see in like a Pixar animated movie.
That's true. Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, I'm excited about it. You asked me. I guess I'm not really excited about. I don't plan on buying the PS4. You asked me yesterday if there was anything that would make me purchase the new Sony system over the new Xbox. And I think that's a fair question. I was thinking about it, but I think that I'm too much of a fan of the Xbox exclusives, and well, the one Xbox exclusive, which is Halo. That's basically the only thing. But I mean, as long as there's third-party support and Halo, I'm basically going to play it. Like, I heard that Infamous is a very good game, you told me, but I don't think I would choose that over Halo.
Yeah.
Just personally. Yeah,
well, right, that all comes to personal preference, because as you know, I don't care for the first-person shooter genre, so I'm not going to get a console where the major exclusive is that genre.
Right.
So I can definitely see the argument for getting the next-gen Xbox over the PS4, just because it all comes down to preference on what your exclusives are. I prefer a game more like Infamous. So I'm really excited about that new Infamous game, and that'll be something that'll make me buy the PS4 just on that alone.
Right.
Well, the other issue is as much new perks and everything that they can show us is how many new people are they converting? And, I mean, that's my big question. I mean, even though unless Microsoft absolutely screws up what they're going to show us at E3, I mean, a lot of other issues go into just like, oh, what does it do? What does it do? That was the choice people made when they bought 360 and PS3 or Wii. Now that's not the choice they're making because most of their friends like either play one or the other and they don't really switch. You know, I've had a lot of friends, both in, that I know in real life personally, like everyday friends, and ones that I've met online for years now. Why would I switch at this point?
And I think a lot of that has to do with the things that they implemented, the trophy system and the achievement system, where people think, why would I want to switch? I'll lose everything on my gamer tag, or I don't know what the PS3 equivalent of that is. What's that called?
It's just your PSN
trophies.
account.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
It's just the PSN account. No, and I mean, I can kind of vouch on the other side of that equation that Dave just mentioned, that I did jump in the middle of this past console generation, because I had a 360 for most of this last gen, and then middle last year, I bought one of our friends' PS3s, and I'm completely resold on Sony. I supported Sony during the PS2 era, and then I ended up getting a 360 and liked that for a while, but because I just didn't like the way Microsoft ran their system, I did switch middle of the generation.
Was
So
that because... Oh, sorry. Yep.
Go ahead. No.
Was that because your system kept breaking, that type of thing, or just the way that they ran
it was
in
multiple
general?
things. It was the fact that I went through 2 Xboxes that broke, and the fact that I did not like the fact you had to pay to play online. I don't play many games online, so my issue with it was, why am I going to pay whatever it is, $17.99 for 3 months? I don't know exactly what the amounts are for Xbox Live, but if I only play a game 1 or 2 times a month online, that's not worth it to me. But if I do want to play online, I want to be able to do it, and PS3 offers that without having to pay anything.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And you also mentioned, I think last week, how you have to have an Xbox Live account in order to use things like HBO Go and Netflix. Where
yeah, and it can't even just be a silver account; it has to be the paid gold one. So,
I mean, like a silver account isn't really even a thing. You think
no, it's not. Like, essentially, just gets you online. Those are my. But once again, it all comes down to preference. If you guys play more online, then obviously you're going to have no problem paying the amount. I just don't play enough online to justify the price point.
Right. Now, yeah. So it basically does come down to exclusives, and you're right about that too. The online thing versus, because it seems like, I don't know if the Xbox 360 has a better online than the PS3.
It does.
Okay, but it's probably not worth the money for some people. So yeah, I can definitely see your point there. So, want to run down some of the games they announced with the PS4? Or
yeah, we can do that. I'll start because the one I'm most excited about, I referenced very quickly, was that game Knack. Dave, I don't know, did you check out the stuff that they announced yesterday?
I only saw a couple. I wasn't able to get through everything. Like I saw there was a new Killzone game.
Yeah.
A couple other ones, but yeah, I didn't see Knack.
Knack has me probably the most excited because I know Anthony was, and I'm pretty sure you were too, Dave. I think we've talked about it. It seems to really be a callback to like the PS1, PS2 era, like 3D platformers. You kind of play this little anthropomorphic character, and you can gain mass by accumulating like pieces of metal and scrap metal that are around the world, and you can kind of pull it onto your robot body and like make yourself bigger, and it'll help you get through situations. But it looks very like Banjo or Crash Bandicoot or like Jak and Daxter-esque. So that had me the most excited.
That's
Speaking of those games, we might get into some of those later on with the main topic, so stay tuned.
Right. That's interesting because I'll be interested to see the success of that, because Xbox tried something like that where they had Rare create Cameo, and Cameo kind of fell flat. And
yeah, I remember that vaguely. Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, it'll probably be better only because I think Rare was forced to make a game like that, and it wasn't great. But
and the guy who's developing this is actually one of the guys, I believe, if I'm recalling right, they said he worked on Spyro, Crash Bandicoot, and Jak and Daxter, along with the original Sonic games. So it's a guy who has a history in that platformer type area.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we didn't really get to see much of the actual gameplay because they kind of showed that only through the connectivity to the Vita, which, I mean, I guess we should mention that essentially, I don't know how many people have actually seen a Wii U function in real life or over the video, but Essentially, with the Wii U, there's a pad controller, and you can turn off the system, and you can still play on the pad while the TV is off. And they're having that kind of functionality with the Vita, where you can do the exact same thing. Your PS4 game gets transferred onto your Vita, so you don't have to use the TV. Which I don't think that's going to be capability for every game. I think they just said they're going to try to do it for every game.
Yeah,
so we only saw it on a small screen. So
I imagine it'd be tougher with some of the really, really high-resolution games. You'd have to downscale them a lot.
Yeah.
The other problem would be is that not many people own a Vita.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. As much as the Wii U is tanking and it's probably going to die a slow death this generation, the 3DS is going to keep Nintendo thriving because it's just slaughtering the Vita right now.
Yeah.
That's why Xbox doesn't even bother, because they figure why pour money into something that won't get anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the mobile handheld type thing is just going to be dominated by Nintendo for the future, and to some extent, if you consider it, Apple with their iPad stuff. Yeah.
That would be the only competition to Nintendo's handheld, and I don't even think they would put a dent in them because you'll get the casual audience, but Nintendo still has that rabid fan base that's always going to buy their handheld stuff.
Right. So then we had, I think the next game was Killzone. I didn't really know much about that game in general, but that one was the one that impressed me the most, just because we actually saw a very long string of gameplay, and the graphics really looked phenomenal.
Looks insane, yeah.
It almost looked completely real. Like, it was absurd. It was something like you would go to the movies and play, watch, almost. And I didn't actually get to hear it because the stream crashed out, but the looks alone looked great. I didn't know about the sound effect. But,
really,
the sound is what you'd expect. I bring up a point in that a lot of these games they're new, but they're not different. And Killzone fits that model perfectly. Like, it looked great. It sounded great. It will probably have a lot of new great features, maybe a decent storyline this time. But it's Killzone, and you know what you're going to get from it. You know, that's always the nice aspect with some of these. Yeah, I mean, you could get something totally different there. And maybe they didn't show, I don't think, but the people that made Heavy Rain, the producers that made Heavy Rain, are going to make a new game, and Naughty Dog is going to make a new game. Naughty Dog made the Uncharted series. I don't think they showed any titles or anything from them, but they just said that they're making a game for this system, and those would be the ones I'm looking for.
Yeah, they didn't show anything from them, but they showed a big board with all the developers that are working on them, and they did mention Naughty Dog specifically.
Yeah, there was 50 logos up there for the developers working on the system. Then we had, I didn't actually get to see the next game, really, Infamous. They showed a trailer for that. My feed cut out during that moment. They had Infamous and that racing game, so why don't you talk about those, Dan?
The racing game looked absurd. It was called, I honestly can't, it was Drive Club. Okay. Absolutely insane. I thought they were showing a real live video of a racetrack for a second, and they were going to lead into the gameplay, and then it turned out it was actually the gameplay. And he was going through how they detailed the cars, and they really they showed the fibers on the seats and the interior of the car because it's a first person driving game. And it literally changes when your driver touches it. So if it's a cloth material, the fibers will move when you touch it. Everything is completely realistic, and it looks absurd. And they didn't show much more from it, but I'm definitely going to keep an eye on that. And then Infamous Second Son, I'm a big fan of the Infamous series, like you said, and it just seems like it's going to have a pretty neat story with the dystopian future where everyone's being spied on, and you're pretty much this superhero Robin Hood trying to stop them.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of a cutscene at the end, and you made the remark to me that it just looked absurd again.
It
you
looked
thought
like
it was
a movie.
real. Yeah. And that was a cutscene, but then we saw what was the game? The game where you're a vigilante. What was that one called?
Watch Dogs.
Yeah, Watch Dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that looked crazy too.
Yeah, I saw a video of that a while ago, actually, as just a video package. I think they had released, I want to say a couple months ago, and that game looked ridiculous. I mean, that's all I can really say on it because I didn't know much of the story, but it just looked crazy. I mean, there's no other way to describe it other than this is what we're playing now.
Yeah, this is it was amazing. Just the gameplay. You literally, it's like Grand Theft Auto with a smarter base to it. You walk around and you can hack into everyone's cell phone and see what's going on with their life and how much of a risk they are being a victim to someone, and you can follow them and save them if you choose to, as
right.
Side missions.
And it all seemed to be happening like real time too.
Yeah, it's all real time, and all like the when you're chasing down the suspects and stuff, it goes in like this parkour mode. So like you're like be able to like run up like walls a little bit, like not super unrealistically, but like to like jump fences and stuff to keep up with people. Like it just all the physics of it look insane.
Yeah. Then we moved on to Square did a presentation, which I thought was kind of lame. Yeah, it wasn't even a game. They were announcing. They were trying to show the capabilities of their new engine, but the engine was just a cutscene. They didn't show anything.
And nobody cares.
Yeah, and I actually got kind of excited because it seemed like it could be an interesting idea for a game, and then it just ended up being a demo reel at the end, and I was pissed. And then this guy just kind of came on with the worst broken English I've ever heard and said something about Final Fantasy and then walked away. So it was,
yeah, stay tuned for E3. That's it.
Yeah. Thanks, Square. Thanks for no Kingdom Hearts 3.
Right. How did that not happen yet?
I don't understand.
It's a different story. And Capcom did a presentation where I honestly couldn't even tell if it was gameplay or if it was a cutscene. It looked so good.
Yeah, that what was it? Down something?
I think it was Deep Down.
Deep Down, yeah.
Which it seemed like a medieval style game fighting dragons. That was
it
really
almost
cool.
looked like Dragon's Dogma 2 or something. Isn't that Capcom?
Is it? I'm not familiar, honestly.
One of those games that came out around the same time as Dark Souls was Capcom, and it looked like it could be a sequel to that.
Possibly. And then the last game is a game that I'm going to have Dave talk about. They showed a bit of Destiny by Bungie.
Ah, yes.
Before we get to Destiny real quick, I just wanted to mention the fact that they also announced, and it's not a super announcement, is that Diablo 3 will be on PlayStation 3.
Oh, yeah.
PlayStation 4, rather.
Before the show, yeah.
I think a lot of people did because Blizzard has always been trying to get on consoles, but the problem is by the time Blizzard develops a game, they need it to run on a computer and not a console because they can't keep up.
Yeah.
And it's not like Blizzard says, oh, we hate consoles. Like, no, they want to get it on there, but they just develop so slow that by the time it comes out, technology's moved so far ahead that their game can't run on a console anymore.
Yeah, the guy seems super excited to have it on a console finally, so I think you're right about that.
And on the same stream, yeah, we'll talk about Destiny because it kind of works on the same level in that now we can have Destiny is going to be this game developed by Bungie, and it's going to be like this like developing world type of deal. It's not like a massive online multiplayer game in how we normally know it. It's like a futuristic. I wouldn't even call it a dystopia. It's like just a different sort of place. But it's supposed to be that it's set a couple hundred years in the future, post-apocalyptic, and now human beings are living underneath like this giant, massive city, underneath this giant body known as the Traveler, and it's basically like a giant dome, or not a dome, a sphere rather. And the Traveler hovers above the city, and it's supposed to be like this big monument to how they were saved. And that's where most of the different battles are going to take place now, I guess, is most of the aliens are like coming to wipe out humanity is how I understood it.
Yep.
And you take on this role of Guardian, and you can be like different like rogue or soldier, basic classes, I'm sure different other ones as well. But this is what Bungie has wanted to do for a long time. This is what Halo was originally supposed to be. And other games have tried to do this in the past. And why I mentioned Diablo 3 is because you can't run a game this big on an Xbox 360 or a PlayStation 3. This has to be a type of game that's run on a computer, a computer processor, a computer GPU. You can't run this on a 360 because it can't handle it. It's not big enough. That's not to say that like other games haven't tried it. Like Blink, I know tried it and it sucked.
Blink was the worst.
Blink was awful. And Chromehounds, back when Xbox 360 first came out, had a ssimilar idea in that, like, now, it was different because, obviously, it was, like, at the very beginning, it was almost like a launch title. But at the beginning, you were, like, you'd be around in these teams of mechs, and you'd be fighting for a nation. And you could wipe out all the other nations in the world, and then after a month it would reset so everyone could keep playing still. But it was that kind of idea, like, you could shape a world around you. And this is a little bit, like I said, this is a little bit different in that it's supposed to be in the mold of an MMO, but it's not entirely an MMO. And I think that's basically the premise of Destiny. I don't know if you guys have anything to add on that.
The only thing I have that I want to ask you about, just because you were referencing other games where where systems tried to be like Halo or be like what they want Destiny to be. Do you recall? Because I don't know much about it. I just remember it's little some of the hype leading up to it. That game Haze that came out on PS3 that was supposed to be like Sony's Halo killer.
Oh, like, you mean that? Yeah, I actually do know some about that. Believe it or not, I know it was awful. And, yeah. It had a story mode, and the story mode made not only no sense, but it was just like broken. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of glitches, a lot of errors, and a lot of people couldn't even get to the end of it because it was just so broken.
That's pretty much the base of what I heard, yeah. And then I just remember when it was coming out, Sony was marketing it as literally just their Halo killer, like they were going to stomp Microsoft with it, and then it just got panned horribly.
Yeah. I also want to be clear, though, that Haze was a first-person shooter. This will be a first-person shooter, too, but it's not, join a matchmaking game, you fight, somebody wins, the end. It's not like that.
The thing that makes me really excited about this is I've always liked the idea of an MMO, but I've always been hesitant to play it because it seems as though you have to devote like 24 hours a day to it in order to actually be good, and at that point, I mean, how much do you want to play a game like that? But It seems like with this type of game, it's going to be something where you don't have to be playing like all the time. You might be able to pick it up for 2 hours at a time because I don't know how they would really do like a huge like leveling up system inside of a shooter. Like I think a lot of it would have to do with skill as opposed to just grinding.
Right. I agree 100%, and also to the point that you don't have to pay any extra to play it now.
Right.
Like I don't think Diablo you have to pay any extra, but I know that most MMOs you do have to pay extra to play because it's a separate game, and then you have to pay to continue to be on their servers. Now that brings up another interesting point: is I didn't get to see most or any of that PlayStation 4 meeting or whatever you would call it.
Yeah.
Conference. Yeah, couldn't find the word there. But did they say anything about if PlayStation is going to cost any money to play online? Because I imagine a game like Destiny would cost a lot to keep running on their servers.
They did not, but I talked to Anthony about that before the conference, that I was worried they might talk about it, and he made the point that he didn't think they would go for that right away. That might be something that they reveal really subtly down the line and say, like, PlayStation Plus is packaged with it as kind of an incentive so you get the instant game collection, which I personally like, and I do that myself. But I think that there's a good chance it's going to be pay for online.
Based on the fact that they didn't come out and tout the fact that it was going to be free for online, I would imagine that it's not. But who knows?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because that was one of their big points that they made in PlayStation 3, was that it was going to be free to play.
Just adding one more thing to Destiny, I kind of know what you mean in that I don't really have, and I would describe the art style, because it's kind of like a dystopia, but not really. Like, if you just look at images, it kind of looks just like angelic almost.
It looks like heaven. That's what I thought when I first saw it. Yeah.
And, I mean, I'm really excited. It just looks so different.
Yeah, it's supposed to be post-apocalyptic, but it doesn't look post-apocalyptic at all, except for like a few locations, it seems. But again, it's concept art, so we don't really know.
Right.
Which it looks genius. I mean, like I said earlier, I don't care for first-person shooters, and I still plan on probably picking it up just because of how at the moment it looks and how innovative it seems like it's going to be.
Yeah, so it's exciting. Anything else you want to add to the PS4 thing before we move on to releases for this week?
Nope.
No.
All right, excellent. So we'll be looking forward to that soon. Actually, another piece that wasn't discussed at the conference is about the PS4 before moving on. They announced today that you won't have to be connected to the internet in order to play PS4. Like a lot of people thought you would have to be connected online at all times. And they turned down the rumor that you can't buy used games anymore. So that's gone.
I'm surprised they didn't reference that at the conference just because how many people were concerned about it, but I'm glad they referenced it immediately after.
Yeah,
I mean, that's great news because they must have realized that it would have just made them take a big hit, I would think. That's why they're not doing it.
I was about to say, they only bought, they said, a couple days before, people were suddenly coming to their senses, realizing that they only bought the, rights to it, I guess, to have a system blocker like that, to have it so you could block used games. So I guess to the point where maybe they're going to change it so it can only block pirated games. I don't know. So, because you always see people, or at least I have in the past, you see people playing games like days before they're supposed to be released.
Yeah. Yeah,
so I wonder if it's something like that, if they're going to like modify it somehow. Anyway, that's besides the point.
And I know when Microsoft, they patented the same thing. Somebody made the point that you can look at Microsoft and Sony, they patent all this stuff they don't use. Just sometimes they come up with an idea and they'll purposely slap a patent on it just because they don't use it. Somebody listed a bunch of crap that Sony had patents for that they never ended up implementing with the PS3. So.
Okay, it's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for this week we have some releases, and that's Crysis 3 and Metal Gear Rising Revenge, or as it's called,
Revengeance.
Metal Gear. Yeah,
Revengeance. It's
Revenge.
Not a word.
Oh, okay, that's why.
It's not a
Why I
word.
couldn't.
It's the stupidest title in the world.
Revengeance, yes. So those two came out this week, and honestly, I don't have very much interest in either of them.
I don't care. Dave, you said you were playing the demo, though, right?
Yes, actually, right before the podcast, I was playing, not the demo of Crysis 3, which I probably will eventually once they have one. I don't think they have one out on 360 yet.
Yeah, they don't have one on PS3.
Yeah, I don't think they have one on 360 yet, but Metal Gear does. And I started to play it, and it's your typical hack and slash fighter, and it's not for me. I can see why people enjoy it. I don't want to get too deep into it before we start really talking about it, but basically it's kind of a blah game. I mean, and if you're a fan of Mass Effect 2, the main 2 and 3, the main character's voice, Raiden, is voiced by Thane's son, Kolyat.
Oh, sounds fun.
Yeah.
One of my favorite characters in the Mass Effect series, of course.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So it was just not your thing?
No, it really isn't. I've tried to play them before, too. It's not like I said, I hate fighting games or I hate slashers, Japanese-style, grading system slashers. I'm not going to get it. I tried every once in a while. Like, I got Devil May Cry 4, awful. I tried Devil May Cry 3, too, I think, at one point, which was better than that. But I don't know. These games, Metal Gear as a hack and slash doesn't work for me.
So they took out all the stealth parts?
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
you
because
can...
Snake isn't in it. It's
Well, because it's Revengeance, obviously.
Yeah. Well, it's Metal Gear Rising. It's not Metal Gear Solid, so it's complete. Raiden was in Metal Gear Solid 2, but, it's completely different character set otherwise.
He had a naked part.
Yep.
Yeah, he was a whiny teenager, and in this one now he's a whiny adult. So
He's a cyborg.
Yeah. As far as Crysis 3, I actually own Crysis 2. I bought it flat, I don't know, like $20 after it came out, because I heard the graphics were amazing. And I have to say that they absolutely are the best graphics I've ever seen, and I don't regret buying the game for $20. Having said that, I mean, I didn't enjoy the story enough to where I craved to get this game again. Or the next one.
Would you have paid $60?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, that's the same problem Crysis 3 has.
Yeah.
And based on every review that I've read, and all the demos that I've watched, and all the playthroughs that I've watched that are now on YouTube, it's the exact same game. In that there's no story. The multiplayer is blah. The graphics are blow your mind out, amazing. Dialogue is god awful. It's what you'd expect. These two games are what you'd expect them to be, I think.
Essentially, what Crysis 3 sounds like to me, and this is coming from someone who didn't play either of the first two either, is like you said, I've watched a few playthroughs and read the reviews, and it seems like it suffers from the exact syndrome half the sequels have in this entire generation, which is just being the same gray and brown thing that their last version was. There's nothing new for each sequel that comes out this generation, it seems to me, unless it's something like Mass Effect, where it seems to have a really great story, and therefore it adds to the mythology of the series.
Dan, this one has a bow, though. He has a big bow. An insta-kill bow. How can you go wrong?
Yeah, because, with all the cybernetic suits, you need to use a bow and arrow.
Yep.
I could see myself buying it for, I don't know, $20 again, maybe. Just because I do have to say,
$20.
I do have to say that the graphics, I mean, they were worth checking out. I'm not one of those people that needs great graphics for a game, but the level where you were defending Times Square, I mean, that was incredibly well done. So
in the second one you're talking about.
Yeah, the second one.
Right, yes.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. So, I mean, we'll see. I don't really have any interest right now. I could see myself getting it down the line, but there you have it. And I think those are the only two releases this week, besides some games.
Those are the other two main game releases. Yeah, I think there's a couple of random arcade games or a couple of random indie games. I try to keep up with those, but they're not worth it a lot of the time because no one buys them.
Right. And I guess for reviews, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance has been getting pretty good reviews. Crisis 3 has been getting mixed to good reviews. So we'll see.
Yeah. The only problem people have with Metal Gear Revengeance is that it's short, and I guess it has some replayability, but not a whole ton to keep you playing like 4 or 5 times, which is what you're supposed to do with the fighting game, slasher game, whatever.
Once the demo comes out on PS3, which I just checked right now, and it's not, I'll probably try it out just because I am a fan of hack and slash type games typically, but I'll have to see if this one's for me, but I gotta wait for the demo.
Cool. Yeah, we'll see. And we're also going to go through some sales figures of the week. We're going to try to do that. And these are provided by VGCharts.com. I'm just going to go through the top 5 selling games of the week. Number 5, and I was shocked to see this as number 5 because I didn't even know this game still existed. Sly Cooper Thieves in Time for the PS3.
Yeah, that just came out, and it came. I would guarantee the reason it's that high is because it launched as a brand new game at a price point of $39.99 instead of $59.99.
Okay. I didn't even know they made the Sly games anymore.
Yeah, this is the first one on the PS3.
Okay.
Yeah, they weren't going to, and then they did, and guess what? They ruined it.
Yeah, the twist at the end, which I know, and I played the first 3, and I love them. The twist at the end is total bullshit, and I'm not going to even bother playing this new trilogy.
Tell me after the show, because
I will.
I'm curious.
Yeah.
Number 4, we had Fire Emblem Kakusa.
That's just Fire Emblem Awakening.
Okay.
Yeah, VG Charts puts the Japanese titles, but that's Fire Emblem Awakening, which came out a few weeks ago in America, and it's easily the best handheld game I've played in the past 2 generations.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry for butchering the pronunciation.
It's
and then 3 and 2 were actually Dead Space 3. Number 3 was Dead Space 3 for PS3. Number 2 is it for 360. And then number 1 was Dragon Warrior 7, coming out only in Japan. And it sold almost 1 million copies at 836,027.
That game in Japan, as I believe I told you last week, is absurd. Like, that was the reason that video games are released on Sundays sometimes, specifically from Nintendo, because the government in Japan required the game be released on Sundays because kids were skipping school en masse to go buy the game.
Is it almost as big as Pokemon over there?
It's probably, at one point, it was bigger than Pokemon in Japan.
Wow,
because that was the one that changed the whole release dates in Japan. Before, they were always released on Mondays or Tuesdays, just like they are here. But
Okay. So, can't really buy that if you're in America, but I don't know. Check it out.
A lot of people are hoping it gets localized.
Yeah. So, unless you guys have anything else, that's going to be it for news.
I think that's it.
All right, cool. And we, sorry that was so long, but there was a lot of news this week, so normally it'll be shorter.
Right. Well, you know, a console release is pretty big news. So.
Yeah, right. This is probably, we really peaked on the second episode, huh?
Okay, so now we're going to talk about a topic that everyone likes to discuss in their spare time. They're basically their forgotten favorite video games. Now, this could be from any generation, way back to NES, Atari, any of those that you have any experience with. Feel free to discuss.
All right, and let's kind of do it as, I don't know if you guys made a list, but I made a list of about 5 or 6 games. So if you just want to do like a round table type discussion, would that be good?
Yeah,
sure.
Sounds good to me. I have them all in my head, but I can pull up them on the spot.
All right. So the first one I thought about was actually Gex, the series for the PS1.
Yes.
Enter the Gecko. I don't know the other ones. The only one I played was Enter the Gecko, but a lot of people were the fans of the other ones. And this game, and I think some of the other games we're going to get into, there's this, it seems like, and I think Dan mentioned this to me off the show, a lot of games from this time period have to do with animals as the protagonist, and that doesn't seem to be the case anymore.
I missed those days. I did.
Like we had a gecko and maybe an alligator, but yeah, Gex was a pretty interesting game. The graphics were dreadful looking back on it. I watched a little bit of videos on it last night just to refresh my memory, but it was pretty cool because it had a lot of pop culture references. Gex himself was a funny character. If he was kind of like that thing where if you left him standing there for a certain amount of time, he would make like a witty remark or something like that, or he would just basically make fun of the enemy. So it was kind of meta in that way. It wasn't the best game, but I certainly had a lot of fun with it.
Right, I should have prefaced that too. This isn't about what's really great, because I wouldn't consider Gex in the in the pantheon or the Mount Rushmore of great games, but it's what you enjoyed. It's something that you had a lot of fun with.
Right, and a lot of mine I'm going to preface this by saying a lot of mine are from PS1. So
okay.
So did you guys play that game when you were younger?
I played I want to say it was Gex 3 was the only one I owned, which I've since lost. I just remember the cover was an imitation of Stone Cold Steve Austin, where he was standing on the turnbuckle of a wrestling ring. Not necessarily flipping off the crowd, but implying that he was, just like Stone Cold used to. I forget what the subtitle of that one was, but I had it on N64.
I think Enter the Gecko was a James Bond parody on the cover.
Yeah,
it was.
That was the first.
I had rented that when we used to rent video games every weekend. Had fun with it. Not great. Had fun with it, though. So
yeah, okay.
Dave,
right.
My first one is, I know, one of Dave's favorites, because we've talked about it a few times. And this is totally in the realm of, the game is terrible now, but back then it was still terrible, but I have such fond memories of it that I'm going to bring up anyways, is Tonic Trouble.
Uh-huh.
I honestly do not remember this game, so it certainly is forgettable.
For some reason, the amount of money spent on advertisements for this game might be more than like what they spend on big budget games now. I swear to God, I saw that ad so many times that I felt I had played it, but I'm not 100% sure I did. I'm putting it on this list anyways because I bought it maybe Dave and I had a discussion about it, and then I went to a local video game store and picked it up for $5. And playing it, I don't think I ever did play it as a kid. I think I just saw the ads so many times that it was ingrained into my skull. But it's awful. You're essentially, you're like a little, kind of like Rayman. He doesn't have limbs. He just has hands and legs, like with a body and head floating in the middle of them. And your enemies are vegetables, and that's it. You beat up vegetables, and you're trying to find tonic to like regrow your limbs or something. I forget. It's awful. But I have fond memories of it just because I saw the ads in pretty much any comic or magazine that I opened up for a year.
Yep. No,
I just love the fact that you don't remember if you played it or not.
I don't.
That's phenomenal. Dave, what do you got?
Well, my first one was going to be, it's, believe it or not, a sports game. It's going to be, I don't know if this is really a forgotten favorite, but I'm going to go with Blitz.
Yes, Blitz.
Now, if you play it now, it's like, wow, this is really dull, because it's like you pick from 6 plays and then you just either throw it deep or run like an idiot. Those are basically the only things you can do in the original NFL Blitz. But some of my finest memories were just scoring, like, you know, the final score would be like 104 to 106 or something ridiculous. And everyone in 1999, everyone would be either like the Broncos or the Falcons because all the other teams sucked. And it would basically just, or I think Green Bay was another option. People would just throw deep with Brett Favre, and it would just be the most ridiculous game. One of my fondest memories was I was playing over my friend's house, and you know, I just scored a touchdown, and he sent his guy after me, and all you hear is like a bunch of guys hitting each other, and 2 guys just go flying across the screen like in wrestling, and then they just land on the other side of the screen. I mean, we laughed so hard because we didn't even do it; like the computer just started doing it. So, but I'd go with Blitz for sure.
Excellent. My next one was kind of a tie. I put these two together because they were pretty similar. Croc, Legend of the Gobos, and Spyro the Dragon. I would say Spyro might not be forgotten anymore because of that Skylander type game, but before that I feel like it definitely was forgotten, and I don't even really count that as a Spyro game.
Skylanders is an abortion. But I love the 3 original Spyro games remain 3 of my favorite games of all time, so I definitely feel you on that one.
As I said, these are 2 more PS1 games, and they were great. They were kind of like the collectible type games in the Banjo-Kazooie vein. They were just very original for the time. I remember Spyro had a lot of cool powers like the charge and the flame, and it was different, I thought. Well, not necessarily different than the type of games that PS1 was coming out with at the time, but just different compared to what we have now.
Yeah.
But I thought those games were both pretty good, yeah.
Well, my next one would also be on PlayStation 1 then. We're seeing this trend of that generation, because that's when we grew up. But I actually bought this one last week. I hadn't seen a physical copy of it since I was around 8 or 9 years old at Blockbuster, and we rented it every weekend. But Tomba for PlayStation 1.
Yes.
You were this little pink-haired kid, and you were fighting the evil swine, and all the villains were just pigs with different costumes on. Usually their weapons were pitchforks. And you were like a jungle kid. Like, imagine like Donnie from the Wild Thornberrys if he had pink hair. And it was on PlayStation 1, but it was a side-scrolling platformer still, like a 2D platformer like you would see on Super Nintendo. So the graphics actually hold up much better than a lot of other PS1 games, just because all the graphical power went into like advanced sprites, I guess you'd call them.
Yeah,
so it definitely holds up a lot better, I feel. But it goes for up to, with the case in manual and good condition, it goes up for over $100 on eBay. And I was just kind of browsing around the local comic store that sells some used video games, and I was like, I look for it every time I go to a video game store, and I've never seen it in person, and they happen to have it for $50, and I kind of splurged and bought it. And it seems a lot to pay $50 for a game that's three generations old now. But it was totally worth it, because it was like the last game from my childhood that I haven't gone back and bought yet.
Cool.
Mine is actually going to come from PlayStation 2.
All right.
But let's say it made its name on PlayStation 2, but we played it on GameCube. That's probably how it was released, if I remember correctly, because it was Time Splitters 2. And I'm fairly confident it was released on PlayStation first, but I might be wrong about that because of when GameCube was developed. But anyway, this is one where I don't think any of us that owned it ever played the single player. We only went over to each other's house and played the multiplayer. And because it was, again, one of those in the same vein as like a Perfect Dark where you could have bots that you could play with. So, now granted it came out after Perfect Dark, but it was really a really fun game for some reason. It was like a really addictive game that we couldn't stop playing, despite how behind the graphics were and the basic gameplay was. And basically everything about it was like almost 2 years behind, but it was still a really fun game to play.
I remember I actually had that for the Xbox, and I remember the commercials when it came out were that it was like supposed to be the next Halo, which it definitely wasn't.
No, it definitely wasn't anything close to that. In fact, it was very... I wouldn't say it was awful, because I think Time Splitters 2 had really good reviews when it came out, even though it was behind because of the replayability of the multiplayer. But Time Splitters Future Perfect, which was the one that came after that, I think got worse reviews, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
don't know if a lot of people played it.
I played Time Splitters 2, I enjoyed it. I never played Future Imperfect.
Okay, that's what I thought, yeah. And then they were supposed to make Time Splitters 4, and that never happened. So that one's in development hell, so I can't wait for that to come out and suck.
Duke Nukem forever.
Yeah.
My next one, I was telling Dan about this yesterday. It's this game called Poi Poi, and I'm almost certain neither of you guys have ever heard of it. Is that fair? It's a game that it was so...
Sounds like Chinese food.
It was so forgettable that I did not remember the title. So what I had to do was I actually had to look at a list of the entire PS1 library, and I had to go through the entire list until I got to P, and then I realized what it was. And essentially, it was this game about... It was this party game. I know the first version of the first game, there was two of them. The first one was released in America. The second one was only a Japanese one. That's actually the one that I had. But it was basically this party game where you played as these kids on a map, like a very small map, where you basically just threw rocks and bombs and rockets at each other. And you had these things called gloves, which allowed you to like use the rocks in different ways. Like you would be able to like use one glove as like a tennis racket or something like that. And you were essentially your goal was just to kill the other players. And looking back at videos of it, I don't think it was that good. I just think it was forgettable. But I played it so much when I was a kid with my cousins that it's just it is one of my forgettable favorites. But it's totally absurd, and I recommend anyone looking at it checking out the YouTube videos.
All right. My next one is actually based off of that. When you were telling me about that yesterday, I recalled I actually got it last summer when my friend sold me his old game collection. Was Power Stone 1 and 2 for Dreamcast. I don't know. I don't think they're too forgotten because I think they're two of the more popular Dreamcast games. I know they go for respectable amount of money, like 40 or 50 bucks a piece for an old game. But essentially, it was very similar. You're in a big room, and it was a mix between Street Fighter and Super Smash Brothers, in the sense that it was like a big open room, and you were brawling, and you could collect items and stuff. But it came off more of a straight up fighter, than a Super Smash Brothers did. It was a very odd mix, but I remember we poured hours into it as kids. I haven't not played it because the Dreamcast that he gave me with it is broken, so I haven't been able to go back and give it a look yet. But that's all I remember of it. It sounds very similar to the game you were describing.
Okay.
My next game is called Hexen. Now, some people might know Hexen if they played PC. It was the sequel to Heretic, but we played Hexen on the Nintendo 64. And it was one of the first games I remember that you could actually really seriously play co-op on. And you could pick between, like, okay, the story was basically that, like, there was this demon that was defeated in this game called Heretic, and then there was another realm that you could go to called Kronos that was mentioned a lot in Heretic, and guess where Hexen is? It's in Kronos. And then you could basically be 3 heroes. I think it was like mage, soldier, and rogue or something like that, like a speed guy or something. And the problem with the game is the first 5 levels made a lot of sense, and then nothing else made sense after that. Because it was a hub game, so the 5th world was like a hub world, and you could go to like 8 different places, and then those places would be other hub worlds. It's like, so instead of having one solid hub world, they had like 6, and they all went, like, you could get to the final level. There's supposed to be 30 levels, and you could get to the final level within like 2 levels, and you'd get killed because you didn't level up. And all I remember was that there were like these giant dragon, like, they looked like a giant Gex, but with, like, teeth.
Terrifying.
Yeah, it really is. And that game was made by the people that made Doom. It was made by Raven Software and ID, or id, however they say it. So.
Okay, cool.
I actually vaguely remember Hexen, but I don't think I ever played it. It's one of those ones I always saw at Blockbuster, but I was, at the time, too afraid to buy because I thought it was more of a survival horror game than Doom was. It was not, but I know now. I looked it up maybe like a year or 2 ago. But I was horrified of it as a kid. It was one of those games.
So my next one, and I have to preface this by saying this is only forgotten in America, because over in Japan this game was huge, and I think the series is still going on. It's massive. Was Mystical Ninja for the Nintendo 64, which essentially you took it's this forget what it's called in Japan, but you took the role of this character named Gomon. And he had 3 other friends, and it was a very tongue-in-cheek parody of Japanese culture, but it was made by Japanese people, but it was okay, where you basically went around to these Japanese places like Mount Fuji and stuff, and you were ninjas, and essentially everything in this game was completely absurd, and I think it definitely was influenced because there's so many absurd things that come out of Japan, but I think they just took it over the top to make fun of themselves even more. And I remember there were so many pop culture references that probably make more sense over there. Like you collected these little cat dolls called fortune dolls to get like more health and stuff like that. And I remember each character had their own special power-up, and the main character, Gomon's power-up, was basically turning a Super Saiyan, so it was an ode to DBZ. So
Okay.
it was just a lot of like fun things like that, and so much making fun of their culture. It's definitely the most Asian game you'll ever play, and I recommend checking it out. It's on the N64. They also had a sequel for the N64 that was actually a side-scroller. The first one, Mystical Ninja, kind of played more like Zelda in a way. The second one's called Gomon's Great Adventure. So they're both 2 great games, 2 very different games, and I'd recommend checking both of those out. So this is a case where it's forgotten and it's actually good. Yeah.
All right, here we go. This is probably less of a forgotten one, but it's more of just a fond memory that I have of it. Was just one particular section of the game, and it seems like something maybe both of you played, or at least maybe Dave, hopefully, so someone doesn't think I'm crazy, is Dave Mirra's BMX 2 for PlayStation 2.
Yeah, so I remember that used to be included on a lot of packages. Like, if somebody... It could be like one of 5 games that you could win if it was on a game show or something.
Right.
Yeah, my specific memory about it is the campaign was fun enough. It was very similar to Tony Hawk, which was always just a fun, casual game. But they had a mode when you were playing 2-player, which was, I think it was called Wipeout mode, maybe, where the goal was to literally injure the person riding the bike as much as possible, and you'd get points for it. So you wanted to, like, wipe out as bad as possible and beat your friend's score. And I remember there was one, and I would always play as the Slim Jim guy because it was just funny to hurt him. There was one level in particular where it was a highway, and my friend and I realized if you rode up one of the ramps and got hit by a car at just the right angle, you would get hit so hard you'd glitch over over the mountain in the background and over the sunset. And I think there was a glitch in the game that would just keep making you hit stuff, and it would never stop your score from going up. So we would get in like the millions of points of injury just because the game would glitch out so bad, and we'd always try and hit that exact spot and see who could make the glitch go on longer.
When you say the Slim Jim guy, are you referring to Macho Man Randy Savage?
I am not. I would never want to hurt him. I'm talking about the asshole with the really tall hair.
Oh, I would love to hurt that guy.
Yeah, he's a jackass. So we would just make him get hit by cars or run into trees a lot and just kind of hope that he'd eventually die, but he never did. Always came back for the next round.
I actually think I remember this. Wasn't his hair like so big that when you flipped him over, he would just, like, when you tried to do tricks, he would just, like, crash?
Yeah. If I remember right, that was the case in a few spots. Sometimes it would glitch into the ground, but yeah, other times it would just kind of push you off the bike and glitch.
Idiot. So yeah, I kind of remember that game. Do you have any other ones, Dave?
Yes, I do. This one now, people who are friends or were players of the PC a lot might know this, but a lot of people that played Nintendo 64 probably never heard of this. This is called Battlezone. Rise of the Black Dogs. Now, the original Battlezone was an arcade game in the 1980s, and it was like this weird like 3D simulator, like something you'd expect in the 1980s. It was like this weird 3D simulator, and you just shot like diamonds at things and they exploded. It was kind of dumb, but kind of fun if you were in the 1980s. You probably thought it was great. But this like sequel, I suppose, was really, really fun. Now, what it is, it was almost like a RTS, but not entirely an RTS. It was tank-based strategy game, and you could choose, you like the commander, I guess, as it were, and you could choose like 6 vessels to start the game with. It's like scout, tank, heavy tank, and a couple other ones like mineral extractor or something like that. And you could create turrets and all this other stuff. Now, the premise of the game was it was the Cold War, but in like an alternate reality where both the U.S. and the Soviets had discovered alien technology. So now they're going all around the solar system trying to collect this mineral called, what was the mineral called? It was like biometal. It was called biometal. And basically you could make like this super weapon out of it. And you could either choose to play as the Soviets or the United States, and there were like missions depending on which side you played as. And it was a really fun game, and like you'd build more troops based on how much biometal you got and so on and so forth. But I want to make it clear that it wasn't like, an Age of Empires type of deal where you're like the god mode. You were actually inside of a ship, like commanding other units. So it's really kind of different and cool. Now, the PC remake went critical acclaim, won a bunch of awards, and that one was just called Battlezone. But the one that came out first was the Nintendo 64 one, Battlezone Rise of the Black Dogs. And it was the same exact game, but a lot of people didn't play it because they were like, what the hell is this? But once it came out on the computer and it got a lot more notoriety, a lot of people played it. And I think it's one of those that costs a lot of money now. I might be wrong about that. Dan might know more than I would if he'd ever seen it. But I don't know how much money it goes for now, but it was a really fun game to play, and I highly recommend it. It was also created by Crave, and a quick side note on Crave. Crave made all these awful games. This was the only one they got right.
Do you know any of the other awful ones? Up your head?
I know they made one of the crappy Earthworm Jim remakes. They actually made, what game did you just say, Dan? Was it Dave Mirra's BMX Challenge 2?
It was just called Dave Mirra's BMX 2. I don't think it was Challenge. I don't know if that was a different game.
Yeah, because Crave made that. They were like the Obsidian of their generation. They just made it's crappy. They also made the UFC games, which I guess you could consider a success, but
that's just a success because Frat Boy will buy it no matter what. I'm sure the games themselves weren't great.
Right, exactly.
So my next one is actually one that it wasn't very popular, probably more so because, it came out after the craze was over, basically. My next game is Dragon Ball Z Legacy of Goku 2 for the Game Boy Advance. And the reason this game is probably overlooked is because the original Legacy of Goku was one of the worst games of all time. I don't know if you guys have ever played it, but look up some videos. It essentially was unplayable. Like, the first one went from the fight with Raditz until the end of the fight with Frieza. Essentially, the combat was basically, like, there was no, like, hit detection. So you go up to punch Vegeta, like, he doesn't move at all or respond. He just, like, flashes red. And so he can just, like, punch you right back and basically kill you. So it basically, the entire, like, game was basically using a solar flare to shock someone and then going up to them and punching them. The entire game, and then just walking away from them and just repeating that over and over again. And there was nothing else to it. The second game, Legacy of Goku 2, they actually revamped everything. They made like 5 playable characters, so instead of just Goku, you could play as Goku, Gohan, Piccolo, Vegeta, and Trunks. Essentially, they actually made it into more of an RPG, like they had side quests and everything, and the combat was actually fun to play, and they used music from the show. So it was an overall good game that is overlooked because of how terrible the first one is. And because of this, I think, they actually made a sequel to this game, and they just called it Boo's Fury. They took the Legacy of Goku out of it because they were afraid people were still associating the game with the awful Legacy of Goku, the first one. And right. Boo's Fury wasn't nearly as good, but I would recommend checking out Legacy of Goku 2, which covers the Cell Saga.
All right, I had one a minute ago, and it completely slipped my mind when I was listening to you on that, because I was thinking about my own Dragon Ball Z games I played, which was pretty much all the ones you listed. Oh my God, which one? Dave, do you have another one?
Yes, I do.
All right, you go and then come back to me, because I had one, and I need to remember it.
Okay, cool.
And this is another sports series. It's called MLB Slugfest. Now, it's under the same idea as Blitz, I think, and they wanted to make like a baseball game that was kind of like it, but it was totally different than Blitz. It was made by Midway, and it was one of Midway's last good series games, I think. And you could it was trying to be a real baseball game that they based it on the real rosters of every team, but if you hit 2 base hits in a row, and you were in the 7th inning, your bat would turn to fire. And you could just crank out fireball home runs, and it would count for 18 points or something like that.
NBA Jam. Yeah,
it was like NBA Jam, but with a baseball tilt. And I just found it really, really fun because you could get and if let's say you struck out a bunch of guys in a row and you had a fireball pitcher, you could literally throw fireballs. And you could if you hit somebody they'd turn to ash or they'd try to attack you, or it was really neat and it was really fun, and it was kind of a kitschy, stupid game. If you the thing was you could play the full 162 game season. Why would anybody do that? There's no reason to. This is something that you play with your friends to mess around with. This isn't a game you take seriously. So.
All right, yeah, I remembered mine. Sorry about that. It was when I was reminded of it when David mentioned PC on his one before this past one. Black and White for PC was the game where you were pretty much God, and you could kind of make villages in your image. I don't know if either of you remember that game on PC.
No, I don't.
You don't? Yeah, it was really cool. It was it was very similar to, I guess I want to kind of call it The Sims or something, but you actually were a character in and of yourself, and you could make mini gods for each village. You would have an animal that would be your avatar, if I remember this properly. You could have a cow or a horse or something. My recollection is very, very vague. I own the second one, but I haven't installed it on my computer, and I haven't played the first one since I was maybe 12. But I just remember that you pretty much had a hand that could control the whole village, and you could either be an evil god and kill people, or you could solve problems in the village and make them worship you.
Actually, that sounds familiar now that you're talking about it. I never played it, but I think I know the game.
Yeah, it's tough to speak more to it because I haven't played it for a while, but when Dave mentioned older PC games, it kind of got me remembering that, because I didn't play many games on PC, but that was one of the few that I did. That and Worms were my 2 consistent PC games.
Oh, cool. My last one that I have here, and I'm going to need your opinion on whether or not this is a forgotten game, and I think it is. Just the entire Crash Bandicoot series.
I wouldn't call that forgotten. I think most people...
I wouldn't either.
Most people, I think, remember that in Spyro. I was going to say earlier, even when you mentioned Spyro, like, I think everyone from our generation at least remembers Crash and Spyro, because the outcry when neither of them were on PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale was immense.
That makes sense. I think I was just thinking it's forgotten compared to like so much what it was, because there was a time where that was the number one game behind Sonic. Behind Mario.
Crash Bandicoot is still one of the first three. And I honestly, and I think, I can't remember if our friend John ended up playing it and agreeing with me, or he just looked up game videos for it, but most people who have played both will say that as a game, Crash Team Racing is far better than Mario Kart 64. They did a great job with it, but I think fewer people played it, so it didn't get the recognition it deserved. The Crash games on PS1 were all amazing.
They were, yeah. And it's a shame that it's basically gone now.
Yeah.
And it was the mascot for the PlayStation. That's why you bought a PlayStation for a while, to play Crash Bandicoot.
Well, last night when we were talking, when the guy came out and announced Knack, he came out to the original Crash Bandicoot theme, and I think I was typing to all caps lock to you that I thought he was going to announce a Crash Bandicoot game for the PlayStation 4 launch, and I was crapping myself, and then he didn't. I mean, I'm impressed by what he announced, but he came up with the Crash Bandicoot theme, and it just seemed like a huge tease to me.
Yeah, so I guess it's not completely forgotten, but compared to what it was, I would say it might be a little. Yeah, that's all I had. You guys have any more?
No.
I have one more.
All right, let's hear it.
Now, I'm not sure if this is a forgotten game because the series is well known, but I know that a lot of people didn't have this game, and it kind of fit in a niche, and then it got big. It got big years after it came out, and that was Quake 3 Arena. Now, this was actually literally Quake 3, and it was different because it wasn't Quake 2 was... I honestly forget what the first Quake was. I know Quake 2 was a regular shooter, probably what Quake 1 was, but Quake 2 had a storyline in that you were fighting an alien force called the Strogg, and you were trying to defeat them, and so on and so forth. Quake 3 Arena is way different than that. It's basically id's version of a Super Smash Brothers, but... It was back in 2000. It also came out for Dreamcast and PlayStation 2, maybe. I know it definitely came out for Dreamcast. But it was made by id and Ravensoft again, and Activision. And it was... The single player was, not really played. It was you picked a Quake character, or a Doom character, or Hex... one of their series characters, you could be Doom guy... You could be the Quake guy. You could be a couple of these other, Orb was an eyeball with legs. It was really cool. Phobos. There's a couple of girl characters, too, like Hunter. She had, wings and stuff. It was a really neat game. And the biggest aspect of it was online. And basically, it was any typical, capture the flag, team deathmatch, free-for-all type of game. But it was a little bit different than that, too, because it had, it was one of the first games to use strafing, really, on a really big scale, and rocket jumping, which I know a lot of people use now in different games. And now, I think people still play it in electronic tournaments. I know there's Quake Live that's been released, and it's basically Quake 3 Arena with a lot of improvements and adjustments and better graphics.
Cool. I've played that game very briefly, but I don't really have much to say about it. But yeah, I think you summed it up pretty well.
It's one of those fun things to play online. I'm sure there's not a lot of people that play on the original game disc and game servers now, but Quake Live is essentially Quake 3 Arena.
And isn't it free? It's free to play, right?
Yes, it was. I'm not sure if Quake Live is. I know that the original one was, though.
Cool. So yeah, those are some forgotten games, and if you want to let us know what games you remember from your childhood that you think are just gone and might be invisible, and a whiff of your imagination, let us know what they are, and we'll be sure to bring them up next week. And so we're just going to we're going to do some advertisements, and we're going to get to our last few segments and close things up here. So for you guys, the listeners of Leveling Up, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. Personally, we would like to recommend a few books to you. Dan, you got a video game book based on...
I did. I got How Nintendo Conquered America. It's called Super Mario How Nintendo Conquered America, and it essentially just kind of runs through the history of Nintendo, breaking it down from the perspective of Mario games, but it does run through some other stuff as well, and I found a ton of really neat little facts about Nintendo from it that I didn't know prior.
Yeah, I got The Hobbit as my book. It was actually unabridged, so you can get some very long, very good quality books on here. There's over 100,000 to choose from. I recommend anybody doing it. And if you like the service, you can keep it for $14.95 a month. You get 30% off discounts on pretty much every book. They also have certain specials that they go on. Like I know on Valentine's Day they had a free romance-themed audiobook that you could download, and so they have deals like that going on all the time. So to download your free book today, you can go to audibletrial.com/orangedrinksocial. You could also go to the banner on the right on orangedrink.net. Just check it out. You click that, you get a free audiobook, and you support the show, which is also good because we get some money. Who doesn't like that? Also, if you shop on Amazon, you can go to the Amazon.com banner on orangedrink.net. After you click that banner, special cookies are embedded, and essentially everything you buy on Amazon after that, proceeds of that will go to the show. And it's absolutely free for you to do, and you support the show. So we thank you for that. Let's get back. So for a short segment we're going to be doing this week, we're going to just talk about the games that we're playing now. I know next week we're going to have some different short segments, so we're going to try to switch these up every week. Like next week I'm going to be playing something, I'm going to be playing Silent Hill 2, a game that Dan is forcing me to play. And no, I'm not very big into the horror games, so we're going to call this Anthony Gets Horrified. I'm going to be keeping a journal of things that make me poop myself, so we'll go from there. And so what are you guys playing this week?
Well, I've been switching back and forth between two games. I've been playing, on my PS3, I've been playing Darksiders, which I got through PlayStation Plus service. It was the free retail game they offered in January. I'm just getting to it now. It sucks. I'm kind of forcing myself to play through it, and as I mentioned earlier, I'm a fan of hack and slash type games usually, which is kind of what this is, but pretty miserable. It feels really clunky and slow. I'm probably not going to get through the whole thing. I just faced one of the first bosses, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to stop soon. So,
cool.
Dave, have you played that one at all?
I haven't played the first one. The second one isn't that bad. It sounds a lot better than what you're describing. Mm-hmm. But no, I haven't played the first one yet, no. And I probably won't now.
Good choice. Yeah, I heard more good things about the second one than I did the first. They probably improved on a lot, but I can definitely see some potential in it, but it's not great. And then on my 3DS, I'm playing Paper Mario Sticker Star, which is all right. I've been very bipolar on it. I enjoyed the first world. I hated the second world. I'm enjoying the third one a lot now. They've definitely taken away a lot of the RPG elements that made the Paper Mario series popular, and they've replaced them with, it seems more of a puzzle game now than an RPG game. But I've been enjoying it on and off, definitely more than I am Darksiders. I've been going back to that more than I have my PS3, so that's what I'm playing at the moment. Dave?
Right now, for online playing, I'm currently playing Call of Duty Black Ops 2. That's going to be a recurring theme because several of my friends play it. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but I also know I'm very good at it, so it's kind of like those love-hate things. You can read my review of it. Everything remains the same. Nothing's changed. It's 5 months later. Still sucks. For arcade games, I've also been playing a couple of new ones. Well, not new ones, but I guess returning old ones. I'm playing Geometry Wars Evolved. Now, that came out as a launch arcade game on the Xbox 360. But it's one of the most addictive games you can probably ever play, and it's very difficult because the difficulty goes in under probably 3 or 4 minutes from, stupid easy to ridiculously hard. But it's a really, really fun game, and at times you can get yourself so far into it, and the screen is cluttered with all these bad guys. And it's just I don't know how you're surviving, but you are, and you just keep shooting until you die. And for those that don't know what it is, Geometry Wars Evolved is basically on the same setup as Asteroid, but you can move around. And there's cool, really catchy techno music. The other game I've been playing, again, is the original Doom, which has been released as an arcade title for a very long time on the 360 arcade. And there's not much that needs to be said about that hasn't been said before by millions of other people. Fun game. It has all 4 original sharewares. Very good game. And that's what I've been playing these past couple of weeks. And Halo 4. But again, not much needs to be said on that. It's a fun multiplayer game.
Right. For me, it's primarily just been Halo 4 I've been playing with Dave. Dave is also very good at Halo 4. I think you've gotten a bunch of perfections, which I've never gotten even close to getting.
Yeah. No, I'm... As much as I hate first-person shooters, I'm really good at them. And I keep playing them because I'm good at them and they're fun to play. And they're something like that, like... I don't mean to interrupt you, Anthony, on a little sidebar, but basically... They're one of the games you don't need to pay attention to and play. Like, I can watch Netflix on my computer while playing one of those.
Right. Just do a couple snapshots and then...
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been playing Halo 4. I've almost gotten my second specialization, so there's that. But yeah, nothing really needs to be said about that. And I've also been playing, again, I picked up Crusader Kings 2, which is a PC game, and I've been playing a Game of Thrones mod for that, which is really well done, and I recommend anyone checking that out as a fan of Game of Thrones. And you'll appreciate this. I was playing as Tywin the other day, actually last night, and I was playing during the Clash of Kings scenario.
Okay.
And essentially, this is kind of spoilers for Game of Thrones, but not really. Basically, spoilers for last season, where Tywin, you start off fighting Robb Stark, like your armies are against each other. Essentially, Robb Stark ended up taking Joffrey out. And so basically I got an event that said the Iron Throne is basically vacated and whoever walks through its gates can become the king. So I walked through the gates and somehow Joffrey got back on the Iron Throne because I supported him, so that was terrible. Then eventually I died as Tywin, so I ended up being Cersei as his heir. And someone usurped the throne from Joffrey. And essentially everything went to hell. The Iron Islands invaded me. There was a war against me, like a civil war to try to lower crown authority. Then Joffrey declared war on me as his mother because he wanted the Westerlands. And then all of a sudden, just Daenerys invaded and like killed everyone.
There you go.
Fun game. I recommend checking it out. You can just look up on Google Crusader Kings 2 Game of Thrones mod, and it's really well done. So that's what I've been playing. So this is another recurring segment we're going to try to do. Dan doesn't really play online, but Dave and I do. So we're just going to do this segment, but a couple minutes long, called Biggest Dicks of the Week Online. Very catchy. And this comes
Don't look that up. Don't type that into anything.
Mine comes from Halo 4. As I said, I've been playing that this week. And this is something that recurs all the time. Whenever you get in the Mantis in Halo 4, and this happened to me again this week, which is basically like the AT-AT style walker thing, or ATST. You get into the Mantis, which is the strongest ship in the game. And if you're like racing someone to the Mantis and you get in it before them, 9 times out of 10, they're just going to start throwing grenades at you and like trying to kill you, even though you're on their team. And it's the worst because they basically destroy your Mantis, and if you retaliate against them and try to kill them in response, you might get booted from the game.
Right. Yeah.
So
what they'll do is they'll try to stun you, so they'll have a plasma pistol and make it so you're EMP'd and can't move. Just even worse.
That's my biggest dick of the week.
Mine, actually, I can mention a guy that came from playing Call of Duty today. He was on my own team, and I usually don't play with my mic in, but this guy warranted me putting my mic in so I could tell him to basically shut the hell up. We were playing hardcore kill confirmed. Now, kill confirmed is where instead of team deathmatch, your kills immediately count. You have to pick up, like, basically their dog tags and then your kill count, so it adds a little bit of a different spice to it. And hardcore is basically your health is lower and bullets hurt more, so it's not insta-death, but it's pretty damn close. And this guy was complaining about camping, and he kept saying everyone on his team, my team, was camping, despite the fact that everyone was moving around, no one was sitting still, no one was doing anything. And he kept saying, he used all sorts of expletives and everything else, so I had to put my mic in and tell him, no one's camping, you're an idiot, and I proceeded to kill him 3 times to get myself booted, just to prove a point.
So in a way, you were a dick, too.
In a way, I was, but it was a counter-dick move.
Right.
So...
Yeah, I support that kind of
I don't
dickery.
blame you, yeah.
Also, even though Dan doesn't play online, I think he can add to this category by saying, what was your biggest, oh, F you moment, I guess, either playing Fire Emblem or something like that, like something that really annoyed you?
Well, you're talking just like against the AI, right?
Yeah. I know you're not playing online. I'm just saying,
Okay, yeah. Well,
it's kind of the same idea.
Yeah, all right. Well, I got one then. Yeah, in the final boss of Fire Emblem, you're fighting on the back of this huge dragon, and you know how Fire Emblem's set up. It's a strategy RPG, so it's kind of like chess in the way it's set up. And you have to work your way down to the boss at the end, who's kind of part of the dragon. So like when you're fighting him, he's not attacking you. The dragon turns its head around and attacks you, and essentially it one-hit kills any character that you have on the field. So you have to more or less sacrifice a few of your guys to get him down to the right amount of health to let your main character go in and deal the death blow, or your main character's gonna die trying to go in first. So essentially, I sacrificed 4 or 5 of my characters, like it seems you're supposed to do, to get him down to where my main character could go in. And on their turn, he had 2 healers pop up, spawn like halfway across the field, and heal him from across the field. And I no longer had any guys left to attack him. Uh-huh. So it was more of one of those things where it was trial and error, and you had to know that healers were going to spawn there. So the next turn, I had to put 2 of my guys up right where they spawned and kill them before they could heal him. But it was one of those things where it seemed like there was no way you could have possibly known that on the first run-through, so you kind of had to die once to know how to beat that boss.
Yep, I hate those.
Trial and error, basically.
That's really the only one that pops to mind right away.
All right, so those were the biggest dicks of the week. And don't look that up. And, so we'll be back in a second. We'll close things up. Right, so we want to thank all you guys for listening. A bit longer than we thought it would be this week, but there was a lot of information to cover, so we hope you enjoyed it. One thing we want to emphasize to you, it's kind of exciting that we're doing for the fans. I don't know if you guys know this out there, but I run 2 podcasts. We do this one and the Orange Drink Social, and these 2 podcasts are teaming up to give away a gift for the fans. Essentially what you have to do is you can enter in to this contest to be eligible to win a $50 Amazon gift card. All you have to do is, as we mentioned during the advertisements, if you sign up for an Audible trial through us, absolutely free, at audibletrial.com/orangedrinksocial, and you make a Facebook status posting the link to this contest page, which we will post next to this podcast. You'll have to inform your friends that they have a chance to win a $50 gift card, and then you have to tag either one of the show's Facebook pages or one of your friends that's associated with the site in your status, so you let them know that you're entering the contest. You might want to include something in the status indicating that you aren't spamming your friends or anything, that you're not hacked. But essentially, you do those 2 things. You get the Audible trial, and then you post a status. You'll be entered to win this gift card. You can also get 2 more extra entries by going to our individual iTunes pages for the podcasts, the Orange Drink Social and Leveling Up. And for each review that you set up for us, you'll get another extra entry. So you can have up to 3 chances to win this gift card. And we hope a lot of you will enter, because we want to say thanks to our fans and hopefully inspire some more people to listen and get your friends to listen to. Anything you guys want to add before we close up?
Nothing for me.
All right.
Nothing on this end either.
All right, so thank you guys. It's been fun.
It's been the length of a short comedy starring Kevin James.
Yep, and better than that.
Yep.
I'd say so. Yeah, so thanks, and we'll be back next week. And also, we're now on iTunes now, as I informed you, as of last night. So go subscribe to Leveling Up the Podcast. Thank you.